Ryan, what's happening, man? Last time we were talking, you were a little bit sweatier. And for anyone who's listening, we met in the sauna. So those are usually great places to meet people. And we're excited for this conversation, man.
I hope we can recreate that convo. We were going pretty deep post-run, getting sweaty together. It was a good time out at Cedar Trunk.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, we met at Cedar Trunk Ranch. So you were there for that full weekend entrepreneurship event, and you and your brother actually spoke at it. We just went to the running portion on Saturday morning. And so our buddy Ryan Ayala, who hosts the Alchemist Library podcast, had you on the show. And we said, Dan, we love the Cold Plunge. We would also love to have Ryan on. So you had accepted to come on the show, and we didn't even know you were going to be at that event. So we went up and introduced ourselves to you, and then you had your prototype sauna that was there. And then we were all in the sauna together, just shooting the breeze, and had an amazing conversation. And like, if we had put headsets on, that would have been one of the best podcasts we'd ever done.
Yeah, it was very serendipitous. The fact that was like our first sauna that was like out in public. I just happened to be sitting in it. Yeah, it was incredible. Like we were talking before the show kind of about that event, and just, all the interactions that were taking place. And that was just, that was kind of a taste of the whole weekend, and had a blast hanging with you guys and working out and dropping into that Austin scene.
Yeah. I mean, even that prototype that you built, we were saying the property that we're at right now, we have a barrel sauna, which is great, but it kind of like naturally lends itself. So your position is like hunched over in it, where the one that you've built, it's almost on this like diagonal almost at the top. So when you're sitting back, your shoulders and your posture is actually in really cool alignment. Like, such an interesting design and layout that you guys created with that.
It's already uncomfortable enough in a sauna. You want to be able to go as deep as you can go into it. And so, it's just a subtle thing. We kind of question, like, why hasn't there always been like a comfortable rest there? And we found out it's not the easiest engineering feat to like have that angle and have the sauna be put together. But yeah, it's a subtle little piece when you're sitting in there, a little more comfort.
Well, one of the things that's really clear with your guys' brand is like the product is so well put together, and the aesthetic with your guys' original Cold Plunge product, it really stands out from the other competitors in the space. And I think maybe just for our audience's benefit, just getting a little bit more on your backstory and sort of how you got into the Cold Plunge and now the sauna business, I think it'd be really helpful. And then we can just dive in and ask all of our questions after that.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's always interesting with this question, like, where does it begin? But it begins, before Plunge, my co-founder and I, Michael Garrett, we both owned float tank centers, so float spas. So we weren't business partners. I had mine in Sacramento region. He was in the Bay Area. So not many other people owned float spas. So we got to know each other. Saw how each other worked, passionate for health and wellness. Floating started from that. We were just really into it. It's like, cool, how do we share this with the world and get more people doing this? And so from there, COVID hit. That really was kind of the genesis of Plunge itself. I'll take a step back, actually. I got into cold plunging. Wim was my introduction as the individual, the pioneer. Always take a moment and just give him that shout out. It's like, we're not having this convo without him putting his flag in the ground and sharing and proving what he's proved to the world, in scientific settings, to just him, carrying it forward and getting cold and doing, his story is incredible. So I learned it through him. The Vice documentary rocked my world when I watched that, I think for the first time in 2015. Blew my mind. I watched it 2 nights in a row. I cried both nights and just thought it was just like, it was so inspirational. It was hopeful. It wasn't just about the cold. The cold was the mechanism, but it was this individual that was giving hope into more empowerment into our own health, like him saying we are way more in control than what's led on to believe. That was so empowering to me. And flash forward, I was getting into some cold water, was into it, but I wasn't like really doing it. And then I went through a bout of sickness this is around 2017, 2018. And I'd had like 6 colds in 6 months. And I thought I was relatively healthy and was kind of curious what's going on here. My health coach at the time said, hey, let's start incorporating some breath work. Just basically WIM's protocol, breath work and getting in cold. Very quickly, that all subsided. Colds were thing of the past. So that's kind of where it caught my attention. I was like, okay, I'm doing this consistently. Started getting in cold water all the time. Fell in love with it. And, flash forward to COVID. Mike Garrett, he had happened to move to Sacramento. Both of our businesses got shut down. We're in California, pandemic, boom. Unique moment of time. I remember him very early on in that process looking at me like, I'm coming out the other side of this good. Like, this is shitty right now, but I'm coming out well. And so I was in a unique moment in time. I had, broken up with my partner at that time, moved into an RV, my cash flow, like businesses was shut down, had no income. So I was kind of in turmoil. He started designing a cold plunge in his garage and was bringing me into it and was like, hey, I think we could start something here. I think there wasn't, again, this is 2020. The term cold plunge was like, if you knew Wim Hof, that was really all there was here. There were a couple players in the space that were making $10,000, $15,000 units, but there wasn't like this zeitgeist movement that was happening in the sense of cold exposure. It was very fringe. And, so he was building the product and he's the engineer, he's the inventor of the product. And so I was able to see his iterations with it very quickly. And that's when it shifted to me of like, let's do this. And so we really, the genesis of the business was just in the garage, him and I building them. We emailed both of our other businesses and said, hey, pandemic's hit. We've had a little free time. We're building 20. Who wants to buy one? And we were just hand delivering to everyone's house. He had a van. We'd throw them in the back of the van. We'd either drive to San Francisco, we'd drive around Sacramento, and we sold 20 of these. Well, we strategically, from the business standpoint, chose the name thecoldplunge.com. No one had owned that SEO, that domain. So we ranked extremely high quickly. So at that point, we started to get calls from all over the country, the world, calling him and I in his garage, thinking we're some manufacturing company. And from there, it just, the interest and the awareness to it grew very steadily. And then, we got a little more strategic in how we grew as a company and everything. But it really started in those first couple months, just kind of building, how do we get this to a few people, learn about the product a bit. And then we were able to make some connections and the rest, here we are 2.5 years later in a much different place.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear the story, because it's not like, cold plunging was becoming a big thing. You guys were just seeing it as a business opportunity. Like you had said, you were early into Wim Hof in 2015. It seems like the breath work and cold exposure really changed your life like it did to a lot of other people. And it's almost hard to imagine, but I do remember like back in the day, it was like you had Laird Hamilton and they were doing like XPT workshops, and he had like this big ice machine. But the question was like, okay, well, if you actually want to do an ice bath, like what's the best way to set that up? So like maybe you'd go to Lowe's and buy like a tub and fill it up with ice, but it was kind of like a pain in the ass to actually set that up if you wanted to get exposure to cold water.
Yeah, it was either the ice game or the DIY chest freezer. And those were really the options of putting yourself in a meat freezer and unplugging it and making sure you don't get electrocuted. And those were kind of the options. And we felt that was another piece getting into it. We were like, if we can get this price point down, like our base model is $5,000. And that was kind of what we probably wouldn't have done this company if we, when all was said and done, if we felt confident and like we were proud of the unit, but it was still at 10,000 or higher. I don't think we would have went and done this as a company. Like we just, that wasn't interesting to us. We wanted to actually disrupt and create a product which we thought was more affordable, but also didn't lack on the ability and the effectiveness of the unit.
Let's take a minute to talk about some of the sponsors and brands who support the show.
Who are you thinking?
I was thinking about Carnivore Bar. What are your thoughts on Carnivore Bar?
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable product. We were lucky enough to have the founder, Philip Meese, on the show a few months ago, and he was able to send us a bunch of product when we started the relationship and absolutely loved it. I mean, it's a minimum ingredient product. beef, tallow, salt. And then they do have a honey flavored option as well. But it's so nice to have a bar that's like 3 to 4 ingredients. And like when you're following a carnivore diet, it's really tough to find products that are in line with that specific diet, you know?
Yeah, for me, it kind of hits like the holy trinity of what you're looking for when you're looking for food. So it's nutrient dense, it's convenient, and it tastes great. And as you said, most people who are trying to eat healthy, the convenience factor is kind of a tough part. So just being able to have something you can grab on the go, know that you're going to have that nutrition for the day, it's huge.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough, we got to actually see their factory too in Missouri, and they're just doing things the right way. I love how they offer an option for like carnivore purists where it's just beef, tallow, salt. And then they also have an animal-based option too. If you do want a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of variety, they have the honey in that option. And they're just people that are doing things the right way. They're very mission focused. They're carnivores themselves. And, you know, we're always on the go. We're traveling. We've taken a bunch of flights together. To have a bar that has 30 grams of fat too, like that's huge from an energy density standpoint, right?
Yeah, he checks all the boxes, or the company checks all the boxes. And I just think the fact that they're sourcing from a regenerative farm as well, and Joyce Farms, just a win-win.
100%. So carnivore bar. So we got the affiliate link, and then it's code MAFIA for 10% off.
And then another one of our sponsors, one of our favorite farms, Holy Cow, what they're doing at Holy Cow is pretty remarkable. The relationships that they've built in the industry and how long they've been doing the grass-fed, grass-finished, regenerative model is really innovative. They were one of the first people to be doing that and supplying whole foods early on. Just a great community farm, and also just the product is something that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think number one, to your point, Harry, they're just incredible people. We got to hear them speak at the Beef Initiative conference in Colorado. We had never met them before, but just hearing Warren's story where they were following a standard American diet, he had a heart attack, and they were just looking for answers of like, how can we actually get healthier? Do I need to be dependent on medication? And they started changing their diets to incorporating more animal foods, and he completely reversed those symptoms of his stroke. And now they're just doing things the right way. They're grass finishing their beef. They're incorporating incredible practices. They have great relationships with the animals, and they're very passionate about just like connecting directly with the customer and also educating their customer on grass finished beef.
Yeah, and I think the best part is too, they're shipping nationally and trying to reach a bigger audience. So being able to not only supply beef nationally, but also educate people on the quality of good, clean, whole foods is just, it's an incredible mission.
How much do you love their beef bacon, by the way? I know that's your go-to.
Dude, it's one of the best things I've ever tasted.
It's that good.
No, honest to God, it's so good.
Holy cow.
Yeah. One of the other farms that supports us is Perennial Pastures, another regenerative farm out of San Diego. Our experience with Kevin Munoz, the owner, we had him on the show, a young first-generation rancher who's really empowered by this movement of regenerative agriculture and really wants to be a leader in the space. I think our conversation with him was so insightful, just in terms of how mission focused he is and how he really thinks about his farm as a business and wanting it to be here 50, 100 years down the road, even though he's just the first generation of it. And I think just being able to spend time with him out in San Diego was kind of the perfect indication of that, where we got to go have a meal with him at his house, hang out with his wife and kids. Like, what an amazing person. And I think his mission focus around raising really high quality beef and restoring nutrients to the soil is just one of those rare missions that I think everyone can get around.
Yeah, he has such a commitment to really feeding the local community in San Diego, in the San Diego County first and foremost, but he's also passionate about feeding the community around the country. So I know they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources to being able to order beef in bulk on their website. So I know that they now offer quarter, half, whole cows directly off the website. They have that great ancestral blend ground beef product. So it actually has organ grinds mixed into the ground beef. So you're getting the benefits of like an ounce or so of organ meat, but because it's in the ground beef, you really can't taste it at all. And I think to your point, Harry, just another amazing person. You know, Kev was someone that he was following a paleo diet in college and started realizing, wow, when I nourish my body with real foods, I feel amazing. Had a really successful stint in tech, but realized that there was just something else that he was passionate about. So he's one of those rare cases where, he put his money where his mouth is, and he's a first generation farmer, just, bootstrapping this thing, raising money, and just so passionate about feeding the community. Just an amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on organ supplements, and what do you think about the company that supports our podcast, Optimal Carnivore?
It's such a good question, man. I think organ meat is something that's gained a ton of notoriety the last few years, and for good reason. I don't want to speak for you, but I think both of us have had a ton of benefits just incorporating organ meats into our diet. I would say that, we definitely prefer the raw source of organs, where we'll just, chop up some liver and some heart, and, there are different ways to prepare it. I think the raw source is the most nutrient dense, but we're fortunate that there are companies like Optimal Carnivore that exist that freeze dry organ capsules, so you can actually take them on the go. There are a ton of times where we're traveling where we're not going to have access to raw organs, so I can throw a little Ziploc bag together of Optimal Carnivore and be good to go. And I think 6 pills is an ounce of organs, which is like the daily recommended amount that will give you a lot of those really good quality vitamins in there. So that's kind of how I think we've been using it. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think the fact that it just makes organs accessible to people. And I think that organs are generally just a food group that are underutilized when it comes to eating nose to tail. And the nature's vitamin is a perfect name for these organ foods. And I think a lot of people are pretty, in the mainstream, object to eating organ meats. But when you put it in a pill form that doesn't taste bad, it's convenient, you can put it in your backpack, it makes things a lot easier. And I also think that just generally these brands Optimal Carnivore is focused on making people healthier, which is just such a strong mission. And, I think liver capsules is a great way to get people thinking about their health differently.
100%. There's probably someone that's listening to this right now, and you're interested in organ meats, but the taste might make you a bit squeamish. You feel strange about eating raw foods. Maybe you cook liver and you don't like it. Maybe it has a metallic taste. I think that's also where the organ capsules play such a great role, is that you're still getting that nutrient density, but you're getting it in a very convenient capsule-like format, and it just takes away any of that squeamishness that you might have to the taste. It's just a great product. And also Richard, who runs Optimal Carnivore, he's started listening to the show really early on, and he's built his own organ supply chain and is just doing things the right way and really trying to support the right people in the space. So just proud to be associated with them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening. Now we're going to go back to the show. It's amazing having such a great product that's so on trend. Like I feel like you guys caught the cold plunge movement like right at the right time, where more and more people are getting interested in it. They're seeing the benefits, and it's kind of like the consumer is now very ready for this type of product.
Yeah.
Do you see a world where, it's not just gyms who are owning this type of product? Like it's, the everyday person is now able to actually access it because the price point gets to a point that's relatively reasonable.
Yeah, I think, to your first part, like, when before it was a thing, like we thought there was going to be, again, there's always a luck. There's always factors that are outside of what could be. We were kind of pinching ourselves, like, are we going to be, there has to be products out there, and it's kind of, sometimes you just are the people that, are more or less one of the first. Like we weren't the first, but we were right in that category. I think from a price point standpoint, yeah, I think as technology improves, there's a piece to this that there's never really been compressors, which is kind of geeking out into the engineering of this product for specificity for cold water in this use case. So obviously freezers have been a thing. You want to get you have a compressor, and the refrigerator and the freezer get cold. But so this is a newer technology that's being developed, and we're on the back end improving that, working on that from an R&D standpoint. So I think as that improves and we find ways to chill water more effectively, like actual water, and that hadn't really been a thing. We wanted to heat water up, or we just had pools, but there wasn't really a need to, like, how do you make your pool colder? Like no one was doing that.
Right.
So I think technology will improve it. I think competition improves things. That's gonna, it improve the market. I think for us too, one areas that we do want to get the price point down is we're going to be rolling out a plunge air unit later this year. So more into the inflatable side, but a high-end inflatable one that you can have in the backyard, but also great that it's great for like mobilization, taking on the road, take it for pop-up events, things like that. So that'll be a price point that we want to get that down for people. And then the other category is financing. That's a big area that we have right now, but also improving that. And I think as the market gets more established, more players want to come in there and you get better options on financing. So, I think the price point, there's always going to be, you see comments out there of like, why isn't this $1,000 or this and that? And like, I don't see the technology getting it there right now. It's just too far out into, to having a sustainable business. I think there are great avenues too. If you want to build your own chest freezer, I think that's like a unique category for people to start in. That's kind of a mid-tier. Obviously, there's work that goes into that, and not everyone's super handy. But if you could cut that price point down. But yeah, I think over time, ideally the price point does get narrowed down and gets more available to people.
Yeah, I love how you talk about like actually encouraging the competition and what that's going to do long term. And something that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about is like, instead of just wishing myself into being in a good mood, I've been thinking about what are the things that I can be doing to structure in my day to make me feel like the best version of myself. And I think I was telling you, we've been out of this property in Bastrop. So like there's a sauna out here, which is amazing. And there's also there's one of your cold plunge units out here that, shout out to Dr. Anthony Gustin, he'd already had. He was like an OG. And then there's also just his pool is just really cold, and it's wintertime in Texas. So it's like in the 40s, but even just taking 30 minutes out of your day where it's like 2 15-minute rounds in the sauna and then like 2 to 3 minutes in the ice tub, it's like you feel like a different person. And it's so to be able to have a unit where it's like you eliminate that friction of having to go buy 10 different bags of ice. It's like you can press a button, you can turn it on and schedule that into your day. It just makes such a huge difference. Like it's so much more than like the cost of a $5,000 unit. It's what that will do to you over time.
I think you nailed it. It's like, you spend 30 minutes, whether you're doing contrast circuits or you're just working cold in, or, these things that we incorporate in these tools. It's like, yeah, there's a time expenditure there, but you're earning the ROI on it's insane. Like, at least for me, like cold plunging first thing in the mornings, like, again, I always dance around. I don't want to do it, but I know, like, go spend 3 minutes in there. Like, my morning will speed up by an hour into what I'm going to go work on. I'm going to be more clear. I'm going to be more focused. I'm going to have more energy. So yeah, I think taking those times in to kind of fill the cup up, or whatever phrase you want to term, is like you become, it's a cheat code. It's a cheat code for life. It's not that but it's not that complicated.
I also love the fact that you don't really need to spend all that much time in the cold plunge to get that benefit. Like, a few minutes, and you really do get, like, it demands so much of your mental focus to just like calm your breathing down, get in that cadence where you almost feel the benefits immediately. But like 3 minutes alone is like the perfect amount. And then, you get on with your day, your body feels great. Like I just, it's one of those things that I started incorporated early on when I started getting really, really healthy, and saw the needle start to move in like these weird ways. It wasn't just like my recovery was better. It was like mental clarity and just being able to really, I think the focus part for me was crazy. Just like focusing on breathing and how that actually affected the rest of my day.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to an interview with the Whoop CEO. Whoop, real big into sleep. And cold plunging has shown a thing that we hear a lot from people is the impact it's having on people's sleep. I'm just sleeping better. Well, then kind of listening to him in his deep dive into sleep, there's a lot of sleep experts out there, but it's like, sleep really comes down to two categories you want to get into. You want to get into REM, which is our deep sleep, our delta wave. And then the the more like the theta wave state. And theta is going to be more brain repair that goes on. REM is going to be theta, I believe, is more HGH. Like that's where our growth hormone is activated. REM is much more into like the brain repair going on. So I've heard these things of like, oh, it makes us sleep better. Well, in turn, that's triggering, like, that's when strength's being created at nighttime is your growth hormone. It's like your workout's tearing your muscles down. That's actually not when you're building your muscle. You're building your muscle in sleep. So it's this full cycle when we talk about recovery for it. Yeah, it's going to help with blood flow. It has these things while you're in the water, but the downstream impact is you're sleeping better, which is the ultimate thing if you want to strength train or if you want to get stronger or have better workouts. Like that's what comes into it. So to me, it's again, another piece to the puzzle. It's not the answer, but it in turn plays into other things. And so I think, sleep is the impact that it has onto sleep is one of the most incredible things.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was listening to a segment. I don't remember if it was a podcast or an article that I was reading, but they were talking about just buds and the Navy SEAL training that they go through. And obviously, like, you're out in San Diego, Coronado, it's the Pacific Ocean, which is probably anywhere from like 50 to 55 degrees. And like the cold water exposure is a huge part of what they're doing with the Navy SEAL candidates. And it's not just a mental toughness thing. I think it's pretty calculated where the instructors are realizing that there's so much physical exertion that these candidates are going through that being able to get them in the water throughout the day is really helping with their recovery and like just optimal performance. So I just thought that was an interesting nugget too.
It makes sense. I mean, they talk about like our brain, the body warms up. That's a signal to the brain to shut the muscles down to like go into fatigue mode. So it's not the body has a whole exertion past that. We always, Goggins will talk about it. You have 30, when you think you're dead, you have 30% more. And there's actually like that makes sense in the body. Like the brain shuts you down. That's telling the fatigue it's in, and the heat's kind of a signal, as opposed to the body actually like needing to shut down. It can go further. Mm-hmm. Well, cold, I think the guy that had the pull-up record, that's what he did. He would get cold before the event, and his brain he could go further. His brain wasn't getting that signal into his body to shut down. Like, dude, your muscles are dead. We need to stop. His muscles just kept going. Of course, the next day he was there is a burnout that can take place and you can totally fatigue yourself. But if you want to exert further, get cold during your workout. Like you will come, that body temperature stays controlled. The brain's not going to send the signal to like, dude, we need to shut it down. You can just kind of exert further. So it makes sense from like a bud standpoint. They're pushing these guys, to that level of total exertion. You go cold. Okay, now we got a little more to go here before the brain's telling you to shut down.
It's so funny you say that. I randomly this past summer started doing cold plunge before I would work out because I noticed this improvement in my performance. I was like, is this, I was like, is this real? Like, this is just me, like kind of like teasing around with this like bullshit idea. But I like my lifts were better because my nervous system was was just firing at a different pace after the cold. Totally. So it's cool to hear you say that.
Yeah. I think the energy that comes into it, it is that kind of you're getting that shot of adrenaline that's coming in. So it's a great pre-workout drink. I've been incorporating, I do it once in a while. This is not like a common everyday thing, but I'll do workouts with the cold where I'll bring my assault bike over and I'll just do circuits of cold and assault bike. And that's more of like I'm doing that more from like a heart rate training, like trying to get my heart rate as high as possible. Then my recovery is actually in a very stressful environment, but which is its own workout and its unique exercise. But the other side to it is I can go so hard on the bike. I'm getting in the cold and I get out and I'm just jacked, ready to go. And I could just rip for, full on minute sprint in there, push it further than I normally could because my body's just, again, it's not overheating and can get that extra push in.
Before we get into the episode, let's talk about Fallen Bone Broth's carnivore blend.
100%. Yeah. We've been huge fans of bone broth the last few months. It's really fueled our carnivore journey. Bone broth is incredibly nourishing, especially on a carnivore, animal-based, or just any type of diet, to be honest with you. And what's great about Fond is that they're a very simple, pure product. So their product is just boiled bones, water, salt, and most of their products have spices like turmeric, cayenne, cracked pepper, but they actually just came out with their carnivore broth, which is very simple, chicken bone broth, water, and salt too. So they're eliminating all their spices and just giving you something very pure that won't disrupt the gut.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk about with the elimination diet is the fact that there's so many things that do actually affect how your body reacts to the food you put in your body. And the fact that they're just doing a pure bone broth with bones and just the minimal ingredients, I think is huge. And the carnivore audience will love this one. Fawn does regenerative bone, so it's really high quality stuff. Go check it out. Use our promo code in the link below.
Yep, code MAFIA will get you 15% off your first order.
Oh yeah. I saw you post that on your Instagram like 2 weeks ago. Do you like to, is it like a minute on the assault bike hard and then you go on the cold plunge? Is that like the cadence there?
Yeah, it's exactly. And you can go different rounds and different sets. So I like to just go like 3 rounds. It's like a fun. And then my focus more with that workout is to control my heart rate in the plunge. Like how quickly, like I'm jacked up after the bike. That's already heart rate flowing. Get into the cold where this is my recovery time. This is okay. Get your heart rate down because we're going to go back on the bike in a minute. Get back in the cold, but the cold's sending all the signal to my body like, woo, like heart rate back up. So how quickly can I regulate myself in there? And that's just, it's a fun kind of metabolic workout of like heart rate up, heart rate down, and then just do 3 sets of that and you're gassed. And it's just fun. It's playful.
Ryan, what sort of advice do you give people who are just starting to get involved with the cold plunge? Because I've brought a few friends to do an ice bath, and the first time is always interesting. Like you can tell they're almost immediately when they get in the water, they're already pushing their limits. Yeah. So are there, mental preparation tactics that you try to like get people to like get in the right mindset so they can stay in longer? Like what's your sort of recommendation for people?
Cold plunge starter kit.
Oh yeah.
I think, I always lean towards like, keep it simple. Mm-hmm. It's just doing it half the time. Like there's a couple little, I liken it to the gym. If I was bringing someone to the workout in a gym for the first time, I'd be like, let's just like get used to kind of moving our body. Let's get a sweat on. That's our goal. Right. I don't want to kill you in a workout where you can't get off the couch tomorrow. Like, let's move, let's get the body flowing, let's reconnect to that. Like that's the goal. And we can show up again tomorrow and have that workout. So with cold plunging, like I'm not one to, want to scar someone and say, hey, let's take it down to 38 degrees and go spend 8 minutes in there. So I think for the starter pack, someone starting out, if they're actually getting in like full submersion, do it with a friend. We're always that much more capable when we're with someone else because you're naturally going to want to get out. And when you're with someone, you have accountability. There's courage kind of rises, so you could do it with someone. So I think it's a very important piece. I think temperature, and this is a very big generalization. I don't like to say this is the right temperature. Every body composition is different. Everyone's a little different in how they get in. But in the mid 50s is a great place to start. 55, like I say, go 55 degrees and go 2 minutes. Like let's start there. Especially if you're playing the long game. If it's something that someone got it, let's say someone just went out and they're inspired. I bought a cold plunge. I'm ready to go, but I've never done this before. I would say set it to 55 and get in there for 2 minutes and just do that with no concern. If you're going to change that tomorrow or the next, you will naturally change it. You will naturally put more weights on the bar in your workouts as you get stronger. Like that will come. So you will naturally lower the temp. You will naturally spend an extra number of breaths in there. Again, start like easy, simple things. I think breathing the exhale twice as long as the inhale, but being like, and this is something I've actually picked up over the years, exerting more energy when you're breathing. So as opposed to like overly calm, that's kind of how I played it from the beginning. And it's there. There's like I'd say once you settle into it, you can kind of get into that breath. But when you're starting out, you want to take air in. You want to warm those intercostals around that region where the blood's flowing into like your organs. So taking it in through I like going through my nose and mouth. So, and just doing that. And I'd say just do that breath and sit in there, have someone time in for 2 minutes, and rock it and feel great afterward. And you want little signals that are important on temp. That's the right thing. You want your breath to get taken away. You want to get in there and you want to get shocked. Like the shock is an important signal. That's the signal of the adrenaline, like getting shot into the body, like the heart rate rising up. Those are the important signals for those are the precursors for the feel-good neurotransmitters that are going to, the dopamines, the serotonins, those things that are going to start happening in the body. So that's a really good signal. So you want to get in there. You want to, like, discomfort is important. And then usually 30, 45 seconds, we tend to be able to push through, and there's a shift that we feel in the body. We kind of start to regulate ourselves, settle in. That's maybe when you can slow the breath down a little bit more. That's it could be 30 seconds. It could be a minute. It could be a little longer than that. But there will be, you get through your first minute, that's the work. And then from there, a 3 to 4 minute cold plunge isn't 80% of the journeys in that first minute.
Yeah,
totally. Settling in. If you're doing like a 5 to 8, 10 minute plunge, then it might pick up again and you're pushing through some new stuff, but that's a kind of a different conversation. So yeah, I always say just do it with a friend. Inhales, exhales twice as long as your inhale, and shoot for that. Go for that 2 minutes on your first one, and don't worry about being in the most cold environment. Just get your breath taken away and just ride through that.
I love that just simple approach and the emphasis on progress versus perfection. It's like, it's so easy to want to just overdo it and be like, oh, I need to be in here for 3 minutes and have it fully submerged in my neck because I'm watching a video of like Laird doing it. And I'm like, that guy's got 20, 30 years of cold water exposure. I think about that sometimes when, like, if we're out in the sauna and I'm being a little bitch and I don't want to jump in the cold water, I'm like, dude, just put your ass in the water and everything good will happen from there. Like, even if all you could do is 30 seconds or a minute that day, like, that's still a huge win. Or like, even if I don't feel like putting my hands in, I'm like, dude, you still got in the cold water. You're still getting benefits from that.
Totally. We're very quick to like diminish our performances. Like, we make them, we diminish them. Like, you got in the cold. Like, if that was it today, like you didn't want to do that and you got that. It's like, rejoice on the win. And I think that's crucial, and play the long game. Again, like, one cold plunge for one day, it's cool. Like, yeah, you might get the video out of it. You might share on social. It's badass. And again, it's great. If you go into the gym, I'm stoked for everyone going to the gym. But where you're going to get the results and why this practice is important is doing some consistency.
Yes.
Working out. Like, you need to work out consistently. This isn't, you don't end one day and like, I got the result and I'm done. It's a constant process. And cold plunging, as more people get into it, realize that's what's going on here. This is a practice that needs to be, carried out consistently.
Yeah. Ryan, did you ever see the documentary Choke with Rickson Gracie?
I haven't seen, I'm tight with Henner and Hedone and the Gracies there. So I probably sounded, if they heard that I hadn't seen it yet, they would, but yes, he's the badass cold, that's his, he's an OG.
Yeah, he is. And for the listener, Rickson Gracie, widely considered greatest martial artist of all time, jiu-jitsu practitioner. His father, Helio, basically created Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so I read his book. And then I think the documentary from the 90s is called Choke. And it's his progression leading up to this huge fight, I think in Pride, which was like a Japanese promotion prior to the UFC. And they have this whole segment where he's like out in some lake, really cold lake before the fight. And people are worried that he's going to catch a cold. And in his mind, it's like the cold water exposure was like so integral to him recovering from his training, but also the mental benefit of like being able to lower his heart rate and control his breathing. And that's like a big emphasis on his book, is how like the lessons that he learned from cold water exposure was really what helped make him a great martial artist. And I think he was to the point where he was literally like fully submerging himself with a snorkel, which is like fucking insane. But I thought that was just really cool.
Yeah, there is this kind of craze of going full submersion now. We actually have a snorkel that my co-founder loves the snorkel. But yes, he is the originator of getting fully submerged and breathing out of the straw or the snorkel.
I tried that snorkel for the first time like 2 months ago, and it's a whole different level. That's a whole different ball game. I
struggle with it.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It's hard, man. It's ultimate brain freeze. You want to talk about pushing through? There is just like the cold plunge itself is uncomfortable, but you go full head under, like then it's in your brain. It's like your head is like literally like you just ate all the ice cream. And it's like, oh, I just need to get through this. Like, no, how about I rise up out of here and warm myself up?
And it's amazing too where your mind goes because when your head's out of the water, you have much more access to like, breathing through your mouth or breathing through your nose at the same time. And like, if you really do need that oxygen, you can get it. But when you're only able to get it through that little tube, you really have to focus in and just like slow your breathing down. So yeah, I think it was a great little thing to like throw in there. I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
It's kind of like it's very, I don't know exactly. There's no real science on it. Like what's that doing? But it's like, you want to take your mind to a whole different place and come out with like the ultimate like endorphin rush coming out. It is go put your head under for a window of time. And that is like you feel it's a magical feeling.
It is magic. And Ryan, one of the things that you'd mentioned is so you and your business partner, you guys had Float Labs, and then you decide you offer up 20 units of the cold plunge, and then you start to build your business from there. So did you have friends and family and customers, they just snatch up those 20 units and you guys are like, oh shit, I think we have like a legitimate business here?
Yeah, it happened pretty quick. I remember we turned the website on and we had a sale in the first 45 minutes and I had no clue someone even knew that our website was on.
Wow.
And that was like a moment of, okay, like, we believe this was going to be something. We were like, we love this. We know this impact, like works on yourself, like, but it's still, there's a big leap to get people to want to spend that kind of money to get into cold water. Like there's a process there. But anyways, we sold quickly. The 20 were sold, relatively quickly. It started to be, I remember our first unit we shipped out, we had actually connected with Aubrey Marcus on Instagram. And Aubrey was like, yeah, get us it. Like, he had a chest freeze and we're like, dude, let's upgrade you. And he was like, you guys serious? And so he's like, cool, let's come on out. Like, oh, okay. We had never shipped a unit before. We had only put these in the back of Mike's van and driven them around and hand delivered all these. So there, we had a business of first figuring out, it's him and I just building these in the garage. So scaling that production was a whole new other journey. But then shipping is a whole piece to this business that we had no clue on. And we shipped his unit out. It was the first unit we ever shipped. And thankfully it arrived like intact. We had no clue how much, when you ship stuff, like even if it's just going to Las Vegas from Sacramento, it's changing hands 6 times. It's going like these units are, let alone to Miami across the country, like there are 14 different times this thing's being taken on and off trucks. Like it is moving, like there's so much, clunking around that's going. You got someone that's trying to end their day with the forklift and it's hitting there. It's like we have so many units of trash. So we've had to learn how to ship them. Anyways, Aubrey's landed safely. Thankfully, we were able to set his up. That was like our first unit we ever did. So that was like a big moment for us from like an exposure standpoint. Starting that process of really, we've done really well from like the influencer marketing, influencer partnership side of things. There was interest. The company's grown, substantially over the last 2.5 years. But to come out of the gate, we had yeah, there was, I like to call it like all the freaks came out early. They were like, it's like, there wasn't really marketing going, but they found us on this cold, like they were searching, whether they were in forum chats or whatever, like these people wanted cold water. They were like our first, first customers, first enthusiasts, super grateful for them.
Yeah, but I love hearing these stories because we're early on in our entrepreneurial journey and really just scratching the surface with what we're doing. And I think there's so much value in sharing kind of like what you've learned along the way in starting this. And I know from our perspective, there's a lot of things that happen that you don't expect to happen as you're, putting, whether it's putting content out there, putting a product out there, that end up like really moving the needle. And they're kind of like good surprises, bad surprises that force you to kind of level up. And so I'm curious if there was ever, or if there are any moments in your timeline with Cold Plunge that stand out to you as those moments where you were like, either have a big takeaway from, or, they just forced you to kind of level up.
Yeah, I think, man, we've had a lot of unique we've made every mistake possible. Mike and I come from no production background. Mm-hmm. So to build that out, there's been a million learning lessons, maybe not that many, but a lot of learning lessons along the way. The shipping I mentioned earlier, that was massive for us. We our first, 10, 12 units we shipped out, probably half showed up broke. For a company that wasn't, just small things that were like, yeah, if we hand delivered them, then it's fine. But when it's switching, going through 10 forklifts, this part just kept breaking. And we finally had to be like, whoa, okay. So there was like so many engineering iterations that have taken place on the product over time. I think, these are fun moments to kind of reflect on the company. 2.5 years in, it's been this whirlwind. I think for us, ultimately, it's just hiring really, really good people, getting very clear into what we don't do well. Like that's to me, like, okay, what lights us up? What are we like? What is he elite at? What am I elite, like really good at? And then from there, like, how do we find the people? Like, what's the biggest challenge the company's facing? Okay, let's go find an expert in that field ASAP. And that's really just been that repeating. And you just kind of get deeper into what I really enjoy doing. So then I go a little further, and then it's like something's going to fall off that I was doing, but we need to find someone that was even better at it. I think also like one area that we've really lucked out in the business, and obviously you guys like as a co-founder dynamic doing this together, for Mike and I, we didn't recognize this. We just lucked out. We have totally different skill sets. So we are fully aligned from like an ethics standpoint, a principles standpoint. So things that we entrust, like we respect each other, I would say at the core of it. Deeply respect him, he deeply respects me. But we are completely different in our skill set. So we co-CEO the company, and it's unique. And at first that was kind of an insecurity for me. It was almost, you always hear there's a CEO, there's a CMO. And we just naturally we're co-CEOs, and we just did it, I think, to start. And then it's become kind of our superpower, where he is product, everything product goes towards him, everything people hits my side. And so obviously there is some crossover, but I think learning lessons along the way is like co-founder. I've done companies without a co-founder, launched it solo. It's super lonely. It's daunting. It's fun. You get to make every decision you want. And there's times you don't want to be making. I am so grateful I'm not the only one making decisions. Yeah. And so going through a co-founder dynamic has been one of the coolest things. I think the level, I don't know what the statistics are out there, but I know like YCOM, they mandate, that's one of the biggest like incubators out there. They mandate you have a co-founder to enter into YCOM because the success rate is that much higher. And I am fully bought in on that. There are days I could never have done this company without Mike, and vice versa. Like days that I wanted to stop, he keeps going. Days that he's struggling, we're good. I got this. Keep moving, and a night's sleep changes everything. And so I would say a co-founder is, one of the biggest learning lessons, gratitude pieces, and just areas I've really like dissected and learned along the way.
Yeah, I would say that with us, it's on like this whole experience has been just so fun being able to build out the Meat Mafia brand with like an amazing friend that you really trust. And it sounds like it's been the same thing for you. I'm just curious, were there any like doctor no's early on that were like, oh, you can't be a co-CEO, or like, yeah, maybe you guys could be co-founders, but like eventually you'll have to like delineate the responsibilities. I'm just curious if you came across any of those objections at all.
No, we never raised money. It's always been us. I think it was my own insecurity. Like as I started to connect with other founders and CEOs and this and that, it was like, it's rare. So that was kind of in my own head. I think some of the doctor no things that's so fascinating just from a business standpoint is like, Mike and I, we come from what we thought was pretty normal, but you set out to run a profitable business. It's like cash in, cash out. Like you want to be profitable. And obviously there's growth stages where you're spending more. But early on, we would take some calls with some, VC or raise, we never raised, but having conversations with people. And I remember 2 years ago, like talking to the economy, it was like, it was almost weird that we were profitable and that was important to us. Like everyone was focused on top line rev growth. And I remember like being like, am I missing something here? Like, am I a weirdo? Because truly, like it would be meetings where I'd be like, you'd almost feel crickets. You could just feel the meeting shift where it was like, we talk about like what our projections are, or what's important within the company. And anyways, it's a shift now looking at the world, and we still have these meetings with people on financial stuff. It's like the world now is profitability centric. Like you need to run a profitable company like that. You aren't having a conversation with someone to raise money unless they're like, your valuation's actually going down for someone to help you out. They're getting a discount because you're not profitable. Anyways, there's been a massive shift in the market. So I just, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's like that's been a fascinating one to witness over the last 2.5 years of just the kind of the contrast in the investment world, from top line to profitability.
How important, you made me think of this with just having a co-founder who can, you're almost like never the same energy level day in and day out. And so it's great to have someone to compliment you. And I think one of the things that I've realized is like momentum is kind of just like the name of the game. And your quote, a night's sleep changes everything, just really resonated with me. Cause I do feel like there's days where like Brett and I are both just like at 100%. And like that can last for, multiple days in a row. But then there are those days where like, maybe you're a 50 and he's still 100. And you just benefit from the fact that the momentum's still growing, and like having somebody else just to compliment you is such a game changer. I really do think that that's been really important for us. So it's cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, it's the quote, go fast, go alone, go far, go together. Like, and I think like what you guys, as I've gotten to know you guys, it's like there's a deep trust, and you guys are, like partners. It's like you can go fast together too. Like I actually like when there's trust and respect, I think going together goes faster than even going solo. So I think, it's crucial. It's crucial to have that. And there, I don't know, maybe it's for whatever reason, like I have deep admiration for those that have done it solo and create massive companies. It's very impressive. Like I just don't, I can't imagine it doing solo. And there's decisions that I just don't want to make solo. It's like there's some, it's like, dude, I need someone to like just affirm my decision. And it's just me. And I tip my cap to those that do it solo. It's highly impressive to me. Those that can just, ride that consistently. But I know it's a lonely road.
Did you always think that you were going to be an entrepreneur and start your own business?
No. I kind of like to beat to my own drum. And so I would do things, I just always kind of did the thing that was outside of what the group was doing. Like post college, everyone was getting jobs. I was like, I'm moving to Europe, like going over there. Always getting into like a profession that I wanted to get into. I think it ultimately allowed that. It allowed me, it was like the ultimate space to beat to my own drum. Like there was a level of autonomy that I got to have within it. So I think that was fitting. But yeah, I never was like young and was like, I'm an entrepreneur. That is probably a newer word in the vernacular now, where it's like, 15 years ago, entrepreneurship was, no one was talking about that. Vaynerchuk probably really brought that to the forefront. It's now like kind of an in vogue thing and much more of a common term.
Yeah, it was like you were just called like a business owner back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was, I was a business owner, and there, it's a unique. Now there's like glamour. It's I wouldn't just say glamour, because there is glamour to it. It's a profession that's really sought after, but it's also one of the most challenging, with the most reward.
Totally. Yeah. And on the theme of entrepreneurship, we were talking about this in the sauna when we had met, how you guys had an epic, legendary appearance on Shark Tank. You got Robert in the Cold Plunge. I think you guys raised 1.2 million that day, if I'm correct. But can you tell us a little bit about that story and how that whole appearance came together?
Yeah, it happened really quick. They reached out to us in summer of 2021, kind of emailed us, hey, you guys want to hop on a call? Take that call. 6-7 weeks later, we're down in LA for shooting of Shark Tank. And it was, it was so much fun. It was like that, it's like that, I don't know, I would assume anyone like maybe like a fighter that gets to go on the UFC fighter show. You get that moment where you view yourself. I've viewed myself as an entrepreneur. It's like, oh, here we go. Like I really get to go into the arena now. And man, it was super cool appearance. Show was, very professional, awesome environment. A lot of funny interactions throughout the day. I remember we changed our valuation the morning of. Like Mike and I were like, we're changing it.
Yeah.
And then we told you get your producers that kind of coach you throughout the journey. And, we're getting it's like final makeup before, like, I don't know, you get makeup like 3 times throughout the day, or touched up. And so we're at our final one, about to go walk out on set. And we tell dude, we're changing the valuation. He's like freaking out, because it's we did a big ask. We were 1.2 million our ask was 1.2 million for 5% of the company. How it works is you have to hit the financial number. You can play with the equity, but we could not take $1 less than 1.2 million. So that's the rules, kind of the backlining rules to the show. So a lot of people, will walk out with giving up much more equity, but they take that 1.2 million, and you can piece that up with equity, credit line, this, that. It just has to equate to $1.2 million. So, he was just like, okay, Ryan, like when you say that number, because it was in my line that I said it, he's like, just go quiet. Like, they're going to razz you. And they, of course, they all say, oh, I bet we'll see about that. Mm-hmm. And so, it was just awesome. You get that walkout before the tank, thinking we're going to forget our lines. I remember that. That was a really fun moment when Mike were behind the doors, and the set gets quiet. Massive warehouse on set. We're on Sony Studios. And it's a massive warehouse. There's probably, I don't know, 50, 75 people on this set, and it's buzzing. And then all of a sudden it just gets quiet. It's just like, poof. And you have one guy in front of us and those famous doors in the hallway, and he's just standing there. He's like, he's probably like the very important, like, psychologist person. That's, even though he's the stage manager, he is kind of checking in, like, hey guys, how you feeling? And we're just there. Mike and I like hug each other and say, like, love you, man. Let's have fun. Then all of a sudden I turn to Mike, and he's just like dancing, like hands in the air, just like dancing as can be. And this is about like, we're seconds away from this door opening and like go. And then it's just go. And come to find out, he had forgotten his lines, and that was the only thing he could think about was like, if I dance, I can maybe move this new nervous energy. So he dances. We walk out. We ended up, he remembered his lines, and the rest is history. And the show went down well. But a lot of fun behind the scenes. The sharks were super cool. It's like the show itself, we were out there for about 40 minutes. They end up cutting the show down to about 5 minutes. You do get some real encounter with them.
Interesting.
And a chance to kind of like share the business, and, you know, they want to get to know us and what's our history. But yeah, Robert got in, he was 55 degrees. It was actually cold. He had his squirm and his scream, which is a legendary,
iconic
scream. And then he settled in, and that was probably the coolest part, to see him actually, like, you could see the shift in his body. You know, about a minute in, he went for 2 minutes, and came down to the end of Robert and Mark, and we walked out with a deal with Robert.
So awesome. Do the Sharks, do they go into that with like a blank slate of who you are, or do they have financials and a business plan that they've already reviewed prior to you going in?
They don't know.
Okay.
The only thing that was known with us was, obviously ours was a unique setup because there's a plunge coming out. And so it had been worked out that we knew a shark was going to get in, and it was probably going to be Robert. So they have on the show, no, you need to tell the story. So we're coming out. We're the same as every other person going out, like the financials. The show does look at our financials. So they are vetting the company to a degree to make sure they're not just making shit up and make this amount of money and get on the show for exposure. And so they vet. And then once, the deal takes place, it's a handshake agreement. And then from there, you're entering into kind of a diligence on the back end.
Did you know which shark you wanted to work with, and were you willing, or would you have been willing to take like less, or give more equity up to work with the right person?
Well, it's interesting. We thought the whole time up until that morning, literally about an hour and a half before going out, that Kevin Hart was going to be our guest shark.
No way.
And so we had got word that he was, because they reached out to us. We got word that he was going to be the guest shark that season. He had his show Cold as Balls. He had been doing his cold. He had, been into health and wellness. So we were like, we had created the story that Kevin Hart's our guy. And a lot of our pitch was built around Kevin Hart. Like we had done, like prepared for that. Like we were going to get really interesting into, we had, charity work's really big to him. So how we could pitch him on how we could help his charity, things like that. So that was all in play. And then an hour and a half before, there's two groups that go. They take one group over to the set or to the studios early in the morning. We were the afternoon crowd. We were first of the afternoon. So we get over to our trailer, and the people from the morning are coming out, and we're like, just thinking like, so Kevin Hart, and they're like, no, Kevin's not here. And we were like, oh, like, God, and they're like, it's just the OG Sharks. And so, it was what it was. Like we didn't change too much, but in our heads, we had thought that we were going to be going out and really, we wanted to go after Kevin, was kind of the plan. But then that went out the window. And so then it was kind of all equal from there. We had an equity number that we had said before the show that we would go to. And so that was there with Robert, and rest is history.
And it makes so much sense too, why you would target it towards Kevin, not knowing that he wasn't going to be there. Cause I feel like at that time, it's like he's done a bunch of marathons, for better or for worse. He's plant-based. He's into his, fitness and nutrition and stuff. So you'd think that he would jump at it, but it just goes to show that if you have a great product and, you're differentiated, it's like people will take notice of that and the cream will rise to the crop. And clearly Robert saw that, right?
Yeah. And I think him getting into the product was really cool. He got to experience it. He felt it, which is a key component. It's like all the partners we work with. It's, we don't really want the one-off post. We want people that this is like their life. This is who, similar to, I'm sure, everyone you guys work with. You're not going to, you got to live it, you got to be about it. And so that's, I think was an impact of him. Come to find out, he had been kind of aware of cold plunging before, and it was an interest. So, things worked out.
How do you think about those cultural dynamics, even just from an employee perspective, when it's bringing new people on and just really making sure that they're, this whole lifestyle is really part of who they are? Because I think that from the successful companies that I've seen that are in the alternative health space, it almost seems like everyone that people or everyone that they bring on board is just like so bought in, and it's truly their lifestyle. So, I think we had a conversation in the sauna where you were mentioning that like your employees are doing cold plunges like middle of the day. So, it sounds like it's important to you guys too.
It is. I mean, we have our core values as a company, and health's at the forefront. You need to be healthy, body and mind. So I think we have a really good core of people that are just, you want to work for Plunge. Well, you're into these things. This is like a natural fit. And then there, it does lead out, like, as we grow, there's a lot of people that aren't. Like, we have different, for us, we're also a production manufacturing company compared to like our marketing and sales and customer service and, that side of the company, which is, they're distinct types of people. And so like a big thing has been, how do we merge like our warehouse production team, or maybe that's not as important, or it's not as much in their lifestyle. And so one of the programs we've instilled now is you get paid to plunge. So people that plunge, they get dollar reimbursements each month. And so it's in turn, it's the betterment, it's the benefit for them. But we're like, cool, like, we know this is gonna X your life however much, like, get in and plunge. And so then it's just, the culture. You get enough people that start doing it, that becomes the norm. So like saunas at lunches, or, meetings are starting to take place in the sauna, people doing cold. And we had an interview yesterday. We're having a pretty high level position here. And, we had our interviews with him, with leadership and presentation. And it's like, cool, let's go get in the sauna, go cold plunge. So like
awesome.
first thing, it's like, you got to be about this. And even if you're not about it in the sense of, I do this all the time, I'm open to it. Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to, I want to learn more about this. Like, that's, the growth mindset. That's really all we're asking for. I'm not asking for the most avid cold plunger. In fact, we like to bring on people that don't, but just like, are you open to this? And are you down to go on that journey? And that's really, the yes. As long as they say yes to that, then, we got the right person.
So you're not firing me if I can't hold a cold plunge for 5 minutes, essentially.
Absolutely not. No, and again, there are some people on the team that don't, cold plunging is not quite their thing. It's very rare. But the culture's kind of just become that, it feels great. It's on site, it's theirs, but pretty much everyone on the team is actively cold plunging and sauning.
Yeah. It's amazing. Just like, even just thinking about what you guys can be doing to just foster better events. And what I mean by that is, I went to one of my buddy's bachelor parties in New York City this summer, and it was like, it was good. We were getting dinners, hanging out. And then, and when I lived in New York, I would go to this Russian bathhouse down in the financial district. It's like old school. It's been there for 20 plus years. It's like a bunch of Russians from Brooklyn. There's like there's sauna, steams, cold plunges, and none of the guys had ever been before. And I was like, well, why don't we go? That would be really cool. So it was like, we ended up going, and they all tried the cold plunge for the first time. We were going in the sauna. They had never done anything like that. And that moment was like the complete tipping point for the trip, where it's like this really cool connected experience. Everyone's testing their limits. And you think about like what someone could do just getting one of your cold plunges at an event or a sauna or something like that. It's like that, almost like that event that we went to, it was like your cold plunges and the saunas were like the focal point of the event. It was really cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of worlds within that to unpack. It's like, there is this kind of people stepping away from alcohol being the central point and being, this is like a new way to, you get high from getting in a cold plunge or getting in a sauna. It's like this new way to go feel incredibly good and socialize. It's a new socializing dynamic. And there is this world from like a party standpoint where cold plunging is incredible for a hangover. Mm-hmm. So for those that, you have it's a rough night, or, maybe even like you just didn't feel good from something you ate, or, but it is incredible to get in the cold post like a party environment, or like from a hard night out. Mm. So it's an interesting, like we're seeing a whole shift into like this is becoming the new way to socialize. I got a party at my house on Saturday night. I have the sauna, the cold. And that's like the thing. It just becomes the party. It was catered. Everyone's eating, hanging out, and we're just doing cold and sauna, and it's great. It's that's how we want to hang out. And then there is this angle that, you have a hard night, dude, get in the cold. It will shake your headache and get you back to like kind of a homeostasis quickly.
I think it's so cool seeing the direction that your business could go in. And I'm interested to get your take on this, because it does really seem like the social dynamics of sauna and cold plunge are kind of untapped. Like people realize it, but it hasn't really been formalized. So maybe to see you guys show up at bigger events and kind of create like this almost new culture, I think the opportunity there is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's, right now we'd probably be termed in the recovery space or the health and wellness space. And I think that's there. With our business, there's a core component to us is just community. It's a big piece that now we have, within the we're doing much more. Like we have our event side, but then we're also now there's an arm to us that we're just launching more in LA and going to start going into different cities, but where we have live events where people are coming together and you're experiencing the cold plunge and the sauna and you're doing it together. And it's fun. It's fun to suffer together in like a controlled environment. Like it's a real, it was our first time hanging out, and the comfortability that we created on that day probably couldn't have, like, we would have never got there if it was just like us standing around and like talking. Like we got to go sit in that sauna, we sweated, we went deeper into the conversation, and I feel like I know you guys on a much deeper level than if it was just like hanging out. So I think there's a whole component that is going to take time to nurture and create, but that is like a key component to what our business, and I just think what this brings to the table. I think you go to like Europe, this is where work gets done, is in a sauna. And then you bring that into cold plunging at an event. It is the coolest thing, no pun intended, to go and cold plunge with people around. Like it is, I cold plunge every single day, but when I get to do it with people that I haven't done it with or that rarely do it, I feel like I'm cold plunging for the first time again. And I'm like, lit. Like I am ready to go. So it's just, it's a human, it's just in our DNA, we want to connect. And then when we get to do these things that make us feel incredible, but doing it in partnership with other people, it's a pretty special thing. So I think it's a key thing that we're, and how that manifests and how we actually do that into the world. That's going to take execution and unique ways of going about it. But that's like a core thing that we want to create, is that there's community.
Yeah. And we felt that too, even when we met you. It was like we came up to you to introduce ourselves. And I think you were on like the road bike or whatever. And we only had a few minutes, but it was a great conversation. And we were excited to have you on the show. And then we got lucky where it was like we were both going to go into your sauna to test it out. And you were in there. And we ended up having like a 45-minute discussion, and just you learn more about us. We learn more about you. We were talking about our principles. And it was like we know that we're going to work together in some capacity just because the conversation and the feeling was so good. And that's like, it's fostered by that experience that we had in there.
Totally. It's a great way to kickstart, new relationships. I think that's like a fun to see where the future holds. I mean, we're pretty new in the US with, heat. Like there's much more established regions where that's a thing. Obviously cold itself, I think that's a newer phenomenon here in the US. And it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out into social dynamics, over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting, man. And we're fortunate that we're now friends with you, and we're just huge fans of everything that you're doing, and just have no doubt that it's going to be pretty incredible over the next 5 to 10 years to see everything that you and the Cold Plunge team go on to do. So Ryan, thank you so much for this conversation, man. It's so enjoyable. We learned a ton. I think our listeners are going to love it. And, just looking forward to getting the tub and the sauna with you again soon.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Cheers.